So a lot of where we've come from is based around money. Money. And people are always worried about money, but it wasn't always so. If we reflect back, it's only 12,000 years ago that civilization began, and it started with us growing food, sitting around the table, looking at how we would share that resource and look after each other. Only 12,000 years ago. Think about it. Now we've been around for 200,000 years. And we didn't make that change because it was any easier. Can you think about just spending 20 hours a week gathering your food, and you could pretty well go wherever you wanted to. There was a change that led us towards that community, and that change was we ran out of resource. So there's a sort of common theme. If any of you have read Jared Diamond's book, and I would suggest that it's maybe a good one if you're looking for some sort of a reflection on why things have to change, collapse, it's called. This is not unusual. Actually, most civilizations, as we grow them, outgrow their resource base. They stop functioning because people get greedy, and then it disperses, and it reforms in another way. The challenge for us is to help that reform where we are holding on to most people, because actually we've got nowhere else to go, have we? We're working in a time of global change, and I'll come on to that later on, because it's not just about local resources, it's not just about local people. If you make it work in Exeter, it's going to help you from the failure. It's not. Actually, we need everyone to succeed. So it's got to be about giving it away, and the biggest ever level. I don't know if we've really understood that yet. We're still grappling within our own organisations, and I bet most of you've come thinking about that. I suggest in 5 years' time a lot of those won't exist in the current form. In fact, if they do, I'd be really surprised, because they're probably not optimised. And then we need to look differently about what that is. Now I'm going to think big. I'm going to reflect on that big society, because it was actually presented to us in 2010, about decentralisation, because there is a gift in there, if we think about it. I'm not political. I have no politics that I care to share. I want to really look at what's happening in that sector, that voluntary community and social entrepreneur sector. And then I want to reflect on my own journey and where I've come to in terms of helping organisations as an entrepreneur and also as a social entrepreneur, giving things away to make a difference. Okay, thinking big society. You remember that, don't you? This is the statement. It's actually the statement taken from the document about a society in which power is transferred from vital to local communities to enable individuals, families, groups and communities to take control and drive real change in local areas. We've been talking about that. Vanessa's just made a very good case for doing that. The problem is it came without money. Well, 12,000 years ago we didn't have money. And actually the biggest resource that we're going to see have an impact on us isn't money in 10 years' time, it's water. Because 70% of our water is locked up in food. And we use oil, so package that up and transport it from one part of the world to another. I keep seeding these things in, just thinking about what really is important when it all goes pear-shaped. What do we really come back to? And it's Maslow's hierarchy. Those basic needs must be met. It didn't start with the present government. It was a global change, and Vanessa alluded to that in terms of the changes in America with playing big markets and trying to make greedy people rich. In fact, if I look back now at the new government's ambition, but they're not a new government anymore, their programmes of reform had some really powerful words in there: empowering communities, opening up public services, and promoting social action. I'm not going to dwell on it. I want to come back to it. It's just a point to bring back and see if I hope they'll address it. When you look around at the literature of a number of people who work in our sector, the message coming back is quite bad. They're saying that the big society isn't working and that they don't necessarily have all the answers. I think we've heard that very well this morning. If you look at the academic papers, they even talk about an austerity war between the rich and the poor. And we see that great division, don't we, where Very few, 1%, are even richer now because of them stopping the money from government going out to help communities in the way that it used to. So we have to talk about rewiring. We have to think differently, because if it can only be about money, then those who already have it are going to certainly make sure they look after it and not give it away. It's got to be about something different. And so the words I want to use are something about systems thinking. It's about thinking about the way that the resource that we already have can work much more effectively within the space that we have an influence over. And if you think about that in terms of the green pound, we know the work out of Schumacher and Transition Town Totnes is the pounds that are made and generated within Totnes that go around that's a civic society, end up having 4 times more real value than something that actually goes out to an external stakeholder and makes a profit elsewhere. Okay. We want to move beyond help. I want to look at this is an interesting approach of looking at the impact of austerity. It's a psychological review of one housing estate in Birmingham and the impact upon the residents there. It looks at the macro level, the cultural changes that have gone on, the neoliberalism, which has resulted in that financial austerity coming through. It talks about the civic society in terms of the local governments, the organisations that work to support them. It talks about the level of community based around that housing estate, and then it looks at the individuals. What's really interesting about it is, while it recognising there are lots of negatives that have come out of this time, there are some positives too. People are beginning to do things differently themselves within those societies, at the grassroots, where they used to just sit in their own house. They will now go out and make sure that other people's well-being is being catered for. There are some, and I would say that there's almost an organisation thing here, the thing about general practice and about health at the moment. We've got a Victorian model of delivery an institutions practice to us where we go to them in their time frame, rather than something that's actually much more about self-help, and done on a community scale. And there are those who clearly haven't learned to change. They were completely reliant on external funding. They have no leverage to build upon. And they are saying that when their service is gone, they can't see how that will be replaced. What I would say is it will be replaced by those individuals if they value it. Because actually some of this was being done to them. They didn't choose to do it. So there's something there as well about the values. What is valued will carry on in some form. I want to reflect here, it's a little bit Amanda's thing there, because if we really think about the model, can we say that this current culture that got us into this mess is going to be the one that gets us out of it? It can't be, can it? There's a definition there of madness. Quite an intelligent chap, I believe. Another example I've seen of that is an aspirin pack and a hammer. If I gave you those, and I just said, I've got this wonderful game, I can hit you on the temple, and you'll get a headache. Don't worry about it. Every time you get a headache, just take a tablet. Wouldn't it be nice if we change it a little bit, and I put the hammer down, you take the headache tablet once, and we think about how we can do this differently. Okay. The establishment, the word, is only an 18th century word, actually. It comes from the established church. And it's a recognition that church and state used to really have the limits in terms of our influence on the world around us. We now recognise in the neoliberalist environment that actually work, the power is in the money, and the money where that comes from. So there's a bigger impact at play. If we look at the energy or power, that's something that's been said to us in 2010, I'm going to go back to now, is that can be redistributed, given away. There's an opportunity there, isn't there? We don't have to think in our small silo. There's an opportunity to grow. Vanessa showed us how we could think about that. If we don't have a limit of the space that we're surviving in, if that's something we don't have to see, or something that will restrict us, all of a sudden there are new opportunities. So, empowering communities, opening up, enabling, promoting social action. That's the opportunity. Now, what do you need? You need an entrepreneur. And I wanted to define an entrepreneur, just so we've got this shared ground of where we're coming from. So it's someone who sees opportunities, which others don't fully recognise. They might not exist within your organisation, but it actually might be the person who's been making the tea for the last 15 years and has a different role within that organisation, has the right idea to solve those. Remember, we have to rewire and think differently about the way we will conduct ourselves in the future. And they've got the drive and ambition to see it through. They're not going to go home at 5 o'clock and say that's it. Because this isn't a 9 to 5 problem, I think. And if we're going to realise the opportunity, it's going to take much more than that. And they will learn along the way, and they will make mistakes. That's part of taking that risk. They lack the fear, so you need a structure to sort of organise that very often. And as I said, I said I'm a social entrepreneur. I've graduated from Dartington as a social entrepreneur on their programme, and I've been running a social enterprise. In fact, I've started 3, and I sit on the board of others and help them through. So what does that really mean? I thought it'd be useful for me to share my journey with you. The difference in social entrepreneurs rather than just entrepreneurs is it's not just about them and profit, it's also about society and the planet. And I very much come from that side. Share something of my background. I had a very successful first career, if you like, in terms of horticulture, land use, and I'm now the head of sustainable land use. I moved back into college in a strategic way, not because that's where I thought I was going to go, but it's where I can make the biggest change to the future generation of technicians that are going to come out and resolve the problems that we're going to face. So I've done that on purpose. But in terms of that background, I've been working mostly in the charitable sector, in zoos and botanic gardens, but they were well financed by people wanting to go to them. So the money wasn't really a problem. What was a problem was we really were making a difference. I could have the last orchid, go and collect it from the wild, and I could show it to you when you come. But the fact is, the habitat is being destroyed. It's not about money, it's about the old paradigm. The one that we're suffering from now is about growth at all costs. And the costs are the loss of natural resources, climate change, and we're going to what, +4 now, isn't it, not +2. A population going towards 9 billion by 2050. That's a third more people in this room within 14 years. My project looked to get at the root, to be radical. So I used an exhibit within the zoo to grow food for the animals, to show how humans could grow food in urban habitats. I had to prove the concept that you could grow vertically. I had to write lots of papers on that because people didn't believe it was possible. It is possible. And rather than just make a commercial gain for that, that's why I started the social enterprise journey, because I realised that it actually needed to be out here, and it wasn't necessarily going to be in raised beds. It was probably going to be in hydrolica, in containers, in more redundant warehouses, on rooftops, underneath, where people live and work. Thinking differently about how we grow our food, thinking differently about the impact of that food on the basis of society. And now I've been moving more towards food smart cities and helping. Birmingham has just launched itself as the first food smart city in the UK. What they've recognised is food is fundamental to the future of that civic society. They want to know where their food is coming from, so they're mapping that. They're looking at how much food production goes on inside their limits, but also what comes from the rural hinterland, and join up all those businesses, because they've recognised there's opportunity there. Food processing, packaging, the supply chain is actually all external at the moment. That's an interesting one, isn't it? There's lots of opportunities there for business. In fact, I can tell you that I've been working with social enterprises that used to grow in soil, that have realised that that was unsustainable because it relied on grants to underpin the management of that, and the productivity at the end didn't even pay for itself. To leverage from a £350,000 investment, return on investment in 24 months. and a profit of £125,000 every year thereafter, above all expenses. It's possible. But there'll only be one in each city. It's not going to be a panacea for all. And it's only for one food type, micro. The green stuff on the side of the plate, which 50% of it ends up in the bin, being a waste product. So I've gone back to victims and look at this, the land use around us. And Devon, landscape is 10%, it's actually the heart of the southwest, 10% of the productive area in the UK and only 1% gross farm land from this county. So much more potential. We don't think about that at the moment. So it's not just thinking about our cities, I think, it's also thinking about those people outside who connect with our cities. Within our cities, there's potential for the green infrastructure. So at the moment, Green has a problem managing that green space. Well, that green space could be a place for energy generation, anaerobic digestion. It could be a place for food production. It could be a place we enable enterprise where people can grow their own food. They can actually feed into supply chains under a brand that can be managed under an umbrella. They can then help feed that city and make the money work in town. It's all possible. We've just got to think differently about how we wire this. The model I'm working with is about partnership, because it is about partnership. It's about giving away, but it's also about recognising your role and responsibility within that. There is lots of room for enterprises, for public benefit organisations, for education institutions. I can add value to those projects because we've got to train somewhere, and I've recognised Icton isn't where this training needs to happen. It needs to happen in cities where everybody lives. And actually, if you think about it, green space, well-being, happiness, our sports, our recreation, where does that all go on? If we don't maintain it, we know that has a huge impact on how people recover from illnesses, how they think about those spaces, how happy they are in their lives. So we've got to do something about it, but there's no material benefit back. But the trees produce timber, and that timber can be very valuable, so you have to plan for it. The wood chip can be used for biomass boilers, we just have to invest in them. And we can share the benefits with district heating rates. Thank you very much. Trying to think differently.